we'll continue on with our meeting this evening. First, do we have anyone signed in for public comments at all? No on the list. Okay. Awesome. All right. First thing on the agenda here, we'll go ahead and get started with is the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Take a moment of silence. All right, thank you. All right. Well, again, I hear it's pretty toasty in there, so hope y'all are able to cool down and keep some doors open, some fans going. So you guys want to get pretty warm and toasty there tonight.
Is it snowing where you are there in Montreal?
I think you should turn the heat on in the room you're in, just so that we know we're all in it together, sir.
Completely understand. Well, it's actually 84 degrees up here, so it's pretty
Oh,
warm throughout the
okay,
lot.
yeah, wow.
All right. First thing on the agenda, approval of the agenda. Can I get a motion to approve this evening's agenda for tonight?
I'll move that we approve the agenda as written. I'll second.
All right. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Oppose? Motion carries. Thank you. Next thing we had, public comments. We have no one that's registered for that, so we'll move past that as this time here. Next thing on the agenda here is the approval of the meeting minutes from last month. If I can get a motion for those.
I'll move that we approve the minutes as presented.
I'll
Okay.
second it.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
All right, thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
There is an error.
Okay. Hey, Angie, how we doing, Daily?
Oh,
Hi.
I'll let Angie
Sorry,
tell
I'm
you.
on my way there now for Fishers.
You're good.
I would like to please have the minutes corrected that I was in person at the last meeting. I was virtual the meeting before that, but I was actually in person for the last meeting.
Awesome, thank you.
So noted, sorry.
All right, we'll make that correction. Any other further discussion? All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Oppose? Motion carries. Thank you. Next thing on the agenda here is the approval of the CEO report. I believe that was just updated and sent out here recently, so we can take a few minutes if you guys want to, everyone wants to move through it, kind of walk through it and see if you have any questions before we put it out for a motion.
There's 2.5 pages of, I think Jill correcting my earlier review I sent out on the budget here.
No.
It's all highlighted in yellow, so it may take a while to plod through that.
We can start with any discussion before we put up for motion. If anyone has anything.
I have one question, and I think I already know the answer, but with Michael Stoudemire, is that just a transfer, I assume?
No. So he is leased in for his teaching position.
Mhm.
He is currently a candidate for one of our internal positions,
Mhm.
but he is at a point in his career that he wants to move into administration. Full-time or possibly going into like higher ed. So to give us time to be able to find a person, he went ahead and partially resigned for right now. So he still has admin duties to finish out, and then we'll see what happens. So.
Oh, okay. But is intent stay at APA? Is that what the?
Yeah, if he, because he is currently interviewing for our current administration position that's open. So if he would be offered that position, I have no reason to think he wouldn't stay.
Yeah. Okay.
But, yeah, it's just time in his career, and
Understood.
the young man, is going to change the world. So,
Exactly. I believe that.
on his way to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's been a frequent visitor here at our board meetings.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
we'll miss seeing him.
So
Jill, do you see any other positions besides these posted that is going to change, update, reflect anything besides the ones that are listed at this time?
At this time, no.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
the summer is young. Yeah, so a lot of the positions that we have right now, all of our retiree eligible people decided, almost all of them, there's one holdout or two holdouts, and this is the year for them to retire. So we also, for that middle school sciences position we previously discussed, where this year we had a long-term sub. And so we wanted to be able to see if we can get a licensed teacher or someone more so with that background in that position. The long-term sub has reapplied because she would enjoy maintaining that position. So I'm not sure what direction that will go. But most of those are retirement, or we have people moving, or we do have our two new positions that we have with CAP instructor number 4. So that is a new position technically for the 23-24 school year, and then we do have that assistant elementary principal position now. It's hiring
Now, the
season.
new elementary, did you say position or principal?
Principal.
Principal. Now, is that the
assistant
same
principal.
as the administrator in training for when we open 25th Street?
Yes.
Okay.
So the intent with that position, the elementary assistant principal, is that it will be a transitional position where going in, depending on building renovations, all that fun stuff, either 24-25 or 25-26 into a full principalship.
Okay.
And as far as the girls varsity volleyball coach goes, that's Chris Ferris. He's staying at APA, but he just started his master's program for admin, and so wants to be able to focus on his college classes and all that.
Does this look like a little heavier turnover than in past years, perhaps?
It not heavier just because it's so soon in the hiring season. I think is why it would appear that way. Typically, we see changes of about 8 to 10 people, which that seems like a lot, but we have 117 employees. So
17.
yeah, so statistically, our turnover rate is much smaller than the education average, which is about 29.5% on the year. And one thing that we worked on this year when we were doing our crystal ball, that we have 55 employees that have been with us for at least 5 years or more. And so, even 5 years ago, we were only about 93 employees. So we've grown significantly in that time period, and we've retained a good staff. But like I said, we've got the retirement year, which we knew was coming, just didn't know altogether. So
Do we still have, I don't know, I've never seen any statistics for it. Do we still have a lot of our employees, especially teachers, coming in from out of county?
more so they're coming from in county recently.
Oh, okay.
We've had a lot of people that have moved to our area and have been looking for kind of a smaller school to work at. We also have seen an increase in teachers coming from the Muncie area A large contributing factor for that is that Ball State is now allowing us to have student teachers. And so until the 2020 school year, charter schools could not have Ball State student teachers. And because of the pandemic, they had to kind of, flex that a little bit, and it has been phenomenal for us. I think at this point, we've had maybe 13 or 14 so far in the last 3 years from Ball State, and we have been able to hire a few of those.
Yeah.
And then that's also helped recruit additional staff. So we are getting applicants, and we did move our application online so that it is through Qualtrics now. And that has really streamlined the application process. It's shortened the time period that it takes to apply, and so we've seen an increase in actually getting good candidates.
Do we have a backup plan if any of these positions do not get filled?
We've got long-term subs. That's pretty much, we have a healthy sub pool right now. We have several that are retired teachers, and they're willing to maybe hop in if we need them to. The goal obviously is to go for licensed teachers, or ones that will be with us for several years. We also, the state has added a lot of ways to help people gain certification. So that we are seeing an increase just across the state in non-traditional applicants. And right now, the state is paying for several people to get licensure programs or do transition to teaching or get masters and things. So a lot of people are taking advantage of that, and we're working to just communicate and recruit. But
Do you find that, I suspect that many of these folks that are coming in from a non-teacher education background may make excellent teachers and know their subject material. Are you finding that to hold true, or have we noticed anything yet?
it just depends, right? Because knowing your content is maybe a quarter of your job as a teacher. Knowing how to take that content and change it for students, put it into their language, make it relevant, and then also being able to handle classroom management and those kind of behaviors, right? Especially because those content people are secondary people. If you have not gone through some teacher programming, or you haven't really worked with youth in the past, middle schoolers can be a little intense. They're a little challenging, and they're going through some life changes. And so the teachers that we have been able to grow here at APA that maybe started off as like an instructional aide, or came in kind of in a different role and then have moved into the classroom, we are seeing good results from. We've had a lot of great success, especially with our Grow Our Own program. That also applies to our administrators, because most of our administrators were teachers at APA prior to moving into administration. And so as we get people who are experts in their field, if they come in and they are coachable and they are focused on kids and relationship building, we are making progress in that area. Because you can only learn so much from a textbook anyways when you take your college classes, and jumping right into the fire, it's one way to learn. So we also, I should note, we are finding more leads through the STAR tutoring program as well. So that's our after school program that we have partnered with JobSource and some other local school districts. And so we've gotten quite a few applicants from the tutors, who most of them are college students that are in education programming. So it's kind of nice recruitment there too.
You had a note about E-rate, which could easily be talked about later. We might want to get it out of the way. I think I don't really understand a lot about the E-rate grant or the program, but I know in past years, one year we had over 200,000, and we were hoping for 135,000 this current year. Looks like we're only going to get about 17, 18,000. And then next year, we're hoping to go back to maybe 135. Could you perhaps just educate us a little bit on what's going on there?
I can educate a little bit, but it's something that Andrea and I need to look more into, because depending on what we get authorized, right? We had this issue last budget season too, where some of it is reimbursable grant, some of it is a discount on our current fees,
Right.
and then some of it is an actual direct payment to us. And so what we need to do is kind of look at, because we should have received more funding this year. There's no reason that we should only be getting that 17,000. So I need to check with our E-rate filers to see kind of what's going on with there. And then with next year, we apply in advance for anticipated projects. So wireless access points, wiring, updates to like our ports and things like that. And they approve certain projects or certain price points. And so then we have to go back. If they say you're only going to get 35,000, well, then we're going to probably table this project. And so that's one of those flex points that we're kind of at the mercy of the federal government and how friendly they're feeling.
So it's more, yeah, I knew it was a discount program, but it's a lot more than that. So I see the problem in, trying to forecast that. Plus, like everything else, you got to apply before you can start receiving anything. So, okay, we'll be interested to see how that shakes out then for us.
One other question, the 10 students that drop in the attendance withdrawals and expulsions, is that pretty typical?
Not fully. So we do see a little bit of drop when we get to kind of that last month of school, because students have run out of shots, I guess, right? You know, if you end up on a behavior contract or there are some attendance issues, the state has been very adamant that once students are at a certain attendance rate, you need to withdraw them or expel them.
Yeah.
And so we have reached that point with more students than we typically have ever this year. And a couple of those, we've done home visits. We've talked to the prosecutor's office. We've talked to, we'd have to file like missing person type scenario check and do all this kind of database stuff. And we've gotten to the point where usually the prosecutor's office is, kind of, okay, a couple of these, they said, no, you just need to do that. Yep. So that has been impactful. We've had a few family life transitions that have been a little challenging for some families for the last couple weeks. And so that's kind of where we've seen that exit. Again, not completely typical for us, but it is more reflective of just kind of where we're at, and where some of the legislation has pushed on some of that. So, did I miss any of the other reasons? I think.
Two of these were families with 2 kids each, so that's 4 kids out of 2 families, and they were having issues with attendance before they ever came here.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
the writing was on the wall at that point.
Yeah. Okay.
And it's one of those things, we are continuing to try to find new ways to bridge that gap or work with that. And that's in some cases where, okay, being on APA online, will that help you with your situation? Okay, you can't get here, there's something going on. But then if they're not logging on, they're not doing their part, we do the home visits, we do the phone calls, we do the texts, the emails, like smoke signals, whatever we can do.
Yeah.
And sometimes it just doesn't work,
Got it.
unfortunately.
Yep.
So is that for future years as well, not just current? That they're
Yeah. They are cracking down, I guess would be maybe a way to phrase it, really checking residency requirements and attendance records now that they are at Source of Truth data reporting, so they pull their reports from our Skyward. Now, that's not going really great for anybody across the state. I know I've been on that soapbox quite a bit about data exchange. But they're pulling that from there, so it's sending up like red flags or, oh, this is an issue or this is an issue. Most of the time, it's not actually a real issue. It's a coding error somewhere in the system, but it is making it so that they are maybe more aggressive about their monitoring of that.
Okay.
All right. Any other further questions? Thank you, Jill, for all that. How to get a motion to approve the CEO report as presented?
I'll make,
move.
go ahead.
Sure. I'll move that we approve the CEO report as presented. Sorry, tongue-tied there.
I'll go ahead and second it then.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you for that, Jill. As always, we appreciate that. Next thing on the agenda here is our financial reports. So first thing up on item A here is approval of our board treasury report as presented. I will turn the floor over to Mr. Ashby.
Okay, let's see. It looks like we want the budget, the final budget first, and then we'll take a look at our April financials and our latest year-end projections. And then, of course, bookkeeping plus here. I may need all of us jump in here on the budget final discussion. As you recall, we had a very complete and thorough first reading at the March meeting. Because the April meeting was so close to the March meeting, we actually didn't have a second reading. And this is our final budget reading, which actually is our second reading. The report that I sent out, and then Jill enhanced a lot of the stuff that I had discussed in her CEO report. Comparing our final budget with the first draft that we looked at, if you recall, the original budget was projecting a $408,000 cash loss, with the ending cash balance around $491,000. Not unusual for a first budget draft. That it usually is a negative number, and then we have April and May to further refine everything, and we have been presented then with a slightly more than a break-even budget here to vote on today. If we look at our total income, we have managed to increase that by $237,580. And the big item, of course, was at the time of our first budget draft, we did not know what the final state funding was going to be. Now we do know. So that was probably the most important component for the increase in total income. And you will notice also, in comparing this year with our budgeted for next year, you'll see that the numbers are reduced. We'll talk about that eventually here. Total income will be about 10% lower than the current year, and total expenses would be about 9%. So it's a little bit smaller budget than we've had under the COVID regime. Total expenses then, we managed to reduce those by about $182,000, and we're now looking at a net cash income of $11,435. So they have satisfied the board requirement that we at the least do want to have a break-even budget entering the new year. Obviously, if we can make more than that, that's always a good option as well. And that would bring our cash balance to 524,535 then. Now, one thing that we did talk about in depth at our March meeting, we indicated that we do have a bit of a built-in buffer or reserve, if you want to use that term, in regards to health insurance, because our budgets, we don't know who is going to be taking what insurance until school starts, sometimes months into the school starting. So therefore, we conservatively assume that all employees are basically taking APA health insurance. Now, if you look at our current year, our budget for this year, the amended budget showed $578,928, and our latest projection then is about 71% of that amount will be paid by APA. In other words, the actual net health expense we're projecting for this year is $411,000, about $412,000. So if this budget, we're projecting the total health insurance expense of $716,239. Now, if I assume that we come close to matching 71% of that will be signed up, that could give us as much as 208,000, we'll round up here, about 208,000 a buffer. In other words, that as we get into the year, Bookkeeping Plus then will change our rolling forecast to actually reflect what we think the net health expense will actually be. And this year, as was mentioned in our CEO report, we're looking at 80%, 25%. APA pays 80% for an employee, and we've upped it to 25% for a dependent. And then Jill will be probably talking about this later, but we are making a change in our health insurance carrier on the major medical portion from our old friends at United Health, who seem to want to stick us with about a 35% rate increase.
That was their renegotiation.
That was their second one. Yeah, their first one is even worse.
Yeah.
And Allstate, the Good Hands people, I guess they actually do health insurance now, and they had a more modest 9.7. Now that's kind of an oversimplification, but everybody gets the rough idea that we felt we had to change, all things coverage-wise being equal, because I think the 716 versus the 578 represented about a 24% increase, so it's pretty steep, and something had to be done. So we don't know exactly what the net health insurance will be for next year, but potentially you could increase what we're projecting as cash net income by maybe up to 150,000, maybe to 200,000. So that should give us a little bit of a comfort there, because I think a projected ending cash balance of 524 seems a little low to me based on, let's say, pre-COVID history, which I'd put maybe 708. So I don't know, but at any rate, I think we've made that point. Now let me see if there's any other things from my budget review that are worth mentioning here. Well, we do still include in total income 2 junior ROTC positions, which of course right now we have none. So not sure how that's going to shape out. That could be some savings there. We've talked about the complexities of the E-rate. I did notice that, and we'll talk about this in the April financial results here in just a minute. I noticed that next year we're hoping for a Title I federal special ed increase of about 16%, This year, though, it's looking like we're now projecting for our year end about 118,000 less than we'd expected. So we may say a little bit more about that in just a minute here. The big highlight really from the total income was, of course, what the state finally decided. The foundation amount was represented about a 4% increase. And if you throw in the total state tuition, it's 4% or maybe a hair more than that. Basically, this last year, first ADM was 850, second ADM was 833. So we lost about 20,000 or so April, May, and June because of that decrease in enrollment. Now, the budget proxy figure that we were using last year was 8,142 per ADM student. The first budget draft of this year was 8,432, and then the state added $144 to that. So our let's say our budget proxy figure that we'll be using is 8,576. So that basically is, let's see, how much more do I have that? Well, at any rate, that accounts for the state tuition here. I guess I didn't actually write that new total down, but okay, I've got it right here. 119,520. See, it pays to have two different versions of the same thing here, in case I get lost on one of them. So yeah, about 120,000 more state tuition, and then that does not include the 47,250 for summer school. Now, quickly then going to total expenses. Again, the biggest reason that our expense level is 9% less than it's been last year or two, I think we all know why. The ESSER monies, we're looking at about 95% less than what we were dealing with this year. And also, we did a lot of computer purchases this current year. So, well, we had 403,992 last year. So those two items account for a lot of why the expense level overall is going to be less. We're looking at 10.9 million versus 11.8 million. The final budget then does have some additional cuts, which Jill's CEO report outlines very excellently. About 147,000 were additional per the final budget cuts in the instructional and G&A compensation. Not a lot of head counts. I would say some positions have been rearranged again, which count for some of that. And then, as you alluded to with Mike, some positions are reduced or may not be filled. I think, for example, we're not replacing our elementary counselor.
Right, we are regrouping on that.
Okay.
Part of using Meridian Health Services as well as utilizing a different staff approach to that. The format that we had hoped to use by having it as a specials class and having her as a school counselor just didn't exactly work for where we are right now.
Mm-hmm.
And so looking to make it so that we can be more responsive and do a different approach.
Okay. Yes, and then in the budget, like the first draft, we were looking at, I think, just sour 85,000 or more savings by utilizing our agreement with Meridian Health versus the two nurses. And then I think the supplies are about another 7,000. So again, we've got that already, had that baked in our first budget draft. Let's see, the debt service then, as far as what will be up, one thing that will be up this year our debt service is projected to be $235,401. And the bulk of that is our 4 mortgage loans. Next year, we have baked into the final budget $497,000. And the reason for that is we are proposing to finance in some fashion $204,000 some for the 29th Street bleachers, and or maybe $140,000 computers, and then I think, don't we also pick up a full year of the $115,000 for the Halo system, whereas we just had a partial, I think, of 85 last year. So that that's the notes that I have that say the highlights of our final budget. I'm sure that there's questions. I'm sure there's other things that could be brought out that maybe need to be. So I'll stop, and I guess if there's any additional comments on the budget, maybe we'll do that next before we jump into the April numbers.
The only thing I was gonna say, the big thing that David mentioned, a lot of the expenses going down, which are correct, and that's due in part to the ESSER grant. So obviously that's going away.
Yep.
Or a very minimal amount's being carried over into next year's budget. So that's the largest reason that the expenses and income is going down.
Yeah, I think that was about 77% drop. I think 330 is, I think, coming in the way of reimbursements for next year, something like that.
Yeah, that right now we have in the budget for SR3 about $330,000 remaining. We currently have more than that, and I think we're going to run into another reimbursement carryover. That's also going to happen with the Title I that you mentioned. Our Title I funding didn't get cut. It's just the timing that the state has been doing their approvals. We're still waiting on our Title II and IV, which typically are approved, I don't know, in October usually. So it's not anything on our part. It's just they've had their hands full, I guess. I'll give them that. So it has changed kind of how we can go about asking for reimbursements, because we've had to pay cash up front like usual. And so we're going to see some of that. I did note in my CEO report, there is another charter grant that is a facilities grant that is a 1-year grant. It does not appear that it's going to be a competitive grant. It seems like it's going to be an entitlement, but they have no clue how they're going to operate it. But they put it into year 1 of the biennium budget and did not put it into year 2. So I anticipate that it's going to be just like CFIG, where it was, hey, you're getting this amount of money, and in a week I need to know how you're spending it, what vendors you're using, and all of that. I included Representative Kyle Pierce was able to at least get me what he called a 1-pager. It's about 3 pages that show a little bit of detail, but really nobody knows anything about this. I think it came through kind of in the last second as some negotiation with the property tax part, since they only did that in 4 counties and we're not one of them. So I'm not entirely sure on that. The other thing that I put in there, the state is working to attack what they're calling the hidden tax, right? The textbook fees. And that has been a long-standing tradition of charging that. I know when I was in school, we had textbook fees. So they're actually trying to make textbook reimbursement process for all of us. They're just going to give us money instead of putting us through all that. We will address that next month to talk about like the policy we need and everything. But right now they are saying their estimate for that is $151 per student. I'm not sure how I feel about their estimate on that, and so we did ours at $125.
Yep.
So there's at least probably another $21,000 there with the Charter Innovation, or not the Innovation, the Charter Capital Projects Grant, not to be confused with the same grant called the Charter Innovation Grant. That one is a $25 million allocation that will be broken out between all the charter students, and so I'm guessing pretty healthy. It will probably be close to what the innovation grant is, not that same extent, but that's what my guess is right now.
CFIG, I think, was about $468,000.
Yes.
And the innovation grant, of course, went up a little bit again, over $1 million.
Yeah.
So you're thinking that this new grant could be between those two then?
That's what I'm anticipating right now, and Beth, you guys haven't heard anything more about it, have you at all? Yeah, it's gotta go to the state board to talk about how they're gonna administer it, but they can't really tie anything to it because the legislation just says this year, charter schools. It doesn't say like your grade has to be something. They've already, as a side note, during this session, they already said we're holding you harmless for the 22-23 school year as well as the 23-24 school year. So accountability grades, at least at the state level, is not going to be a thing again, at least until 25-26. And so, or 24-25, yeah, 24-25. And so they can't put any of those caveats on it. So I'm pretty sure that it's going to shake out just being a per pupil amount. But there's only so many charter students in the state, and 25 million, yeah,
Could go a long way.
could go a long way.
Yeah,
Yeah, we'll make it that way.
very good. Yeah.
Yeah, I was talking to a community partner today about the state has run into some challenges because they gave out the 1008 grant for student interventions and everything over the last 2 years, and people have only spent about 50% of it. And there are a lot of schools that next year is basically your last year for ESSER. You have to have everything encumbered by September 30th of 2024. And there are schools that are sitting on millions of dollars.
Really?
And there's a dashboard you can look on there, and I was like, not us, nope.
Yeah.
Nope, because, the whole point was to spend it.
Right.
And so if there are, we even have kind of within our county, we have people that are sitting on like $20 million still to spend. And it
What
is,
happens to that then if they don't spend it, say, by the end of the calendar year?
don't know, because it's a federal grant given to the state. So there has been a lot of, even with like the 1008 grant, instead of just reallocating it and putting it in the new grant they just authorized for the next 2 years, like we're going to give them 2 more years to spend it. They didn't spend it. They don't want to spend it because the programs they designed, it's hard to implement unless you are really partnered with schools. A lot of community organizations applied for it because that was really, bring everybody together, but they weren't equipped to manage schools or work, in that type of setting. And so I'm not sure what happens to the money, because there's a lot of relief money sitting in a lot of municipalities, a lot of other areas that it's just sitting there. So if anybody's listening, if they want to send it this way,
Well, yes.
we are exceptional at spending every dime. So we shall see on that.
Yeah, let's see, one thing I want to make sure I have clear, the health insurance numbers that we
Yes.
have for all of the employees temporarily, does that reflect the United Health quote, or does that reflect the Allstate?
Okay, so for insurance, it is Allstate,
Okay.
and that is what is in the budget.
Very good.
Originally, this is actually draft number 3, or revision 3, which might be a record for us for only having that.
Yeah.
So proud of us on that one. But at 18 minutes before our corporation-wide meeting, the figures were a 16.9% increase. And I called the broker on my way because I was taking my son to the airport. You know what? Technology makes you be able to do a lot. And he said, hey, I was looking at your insurance recap. Your figures aren't right. So heart sank, thinking, oh no. And he said, no, they came in. I forgot to give you the new negotiated. Once you said that you were going to drop United, they came in with a healthier number. And so that 16.9% overall, which again, it's an oversimplification, went down to the 9.67 that you included in your report. For us as a school, it's about a 12% balance there, because the HSAs went up about 22%.
Yeah, more.
And PPO didn't go up, maybe 5%, somewhere in there. And so that's kind of where we got there. So the 12% will cover us. We'll have Allstate. We actually switch on Thursday, which is a really fun thing to do right this week. And Allstate, some of the benefits with it, they don't have networks. And so I asked our employees when we got that United Health thing, I knew we can't do that to our people, right? That's just not gonna work. And so I asked them to fill out a survey. Well, I had to figure out how we could get insurance that had 9 different networks covered. And then I asked them if you have any like specialty medications or things, like I want to make sure it's on the formulary because, we don't want to sell someone's life-saving medicine and cut them out of our plan. And so it kind of increased the complexity of looking at the insurance, but Allstate was really great for that. They're the umbrella. It's actually Allied Benefits, which is more of a familiar company. And then our prescription plan is actually a Cigna plan. So everybody gets to stay with their doctors. We were able to get a few savings on some of our specialist fees. With the HSA, we were able to get the out-of-pocket down. And so right now the deductible is $5,000 and the out-of-pocket's $5,000. So you hit your $5,000, then you're good, which is great. I did mention there we'll have a couple maternity leaves coming up, so they're taking advantage of that savings plan. But being able to do that and then switch that dependent coverage, because my biggest concern with the original 16.9%, if we left our contributions the way that we had done in the past, our family plan people were looking at about $250 more in premium out of their pocket a month. Now, we don't have a lot of people that are on those plans, but their insurance is significant. I mean, insurance is expensive to begin with. So that's kind of where we ended up with Allstate. Everything seems to be going okay. They are, I got the green light today that they have accepted all of our information and they have actually approved us. And so we're in processing. We're actually about 5 business days ahead of where I thought we would be. So we are just kind of working through that.
Question, so the projected for the insurance cost, does that include like the open positions, like assuming that they will get insurance? Okay.
Yeah,
So that could also fluctuate based on who's hired in and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it fluctuates quite a bit because when people come to us, we don't know their scenario. We do hire typically more veterans than a lot of people, so most of them just pick up vision and dental. But basically, the magic women over there figure out kind of what a cost per employee would be, and that is what's in the budget. So if you actually are on the spreadsheet and you look at that salary summary, you'll see kind of I think it's like $8,000 this year, what we are anticipating. This year, plan renewal, we had 64 employees that had some form of our health insurance. So not all of them that are eligible for it, but we do have a fair few that do it.
We keep with the new positions that get that, and then we keep the ones that are currently there at where they are, but we always try to be conservative with new positions coming on.
Mm-hmm. I think that's it on insurance. It's been a really interesting 6 weeks with insurance.
Yes. See, now Kim will be dealing with that transition, won't she?
Yes, so I will report back on that. Kim did have her surgery this morning.
Oh, okay, so all right,
yes.
yes.
So she is the proud new owner of 2 brand new shiny knees, and her husband texted me, and everything went extremely well, and she was in recovery. So
Very good.
She did both of them at the same time. Impressive.
She may want to stay in rehab a little longer to avoid the insurance transition, perhaps.
Yeah, so she
Might not seem so bad after all.
she was like, it's looking like 6 weeks, maybe 8. I was like, that's really funny because that's all that fun paperwork transition. I think I need to go get knee replacements right now.
Right.
Typically an 8 week. Yeah. With bilateral.
Let's see, Mr. Chairman, do we need to approve separately the final budget, or do we need to vote on that at this point, then, don't we? Or
I've actually got it listed under old business on the
okay.
agenda. So.
Well, then I need to go right into our April numbers then, and year ending. Okay,
Correct, yes.
all right. See, somebody at Crystal Ball told me, they said, you know, if our treasurer would get a new pair of glasses, it might immensely improve the treasurer's report that we get each month. So I do have some new glasses on. I don't know if it did much for the budget, but we'll see if it does improve anything else here. Okay, now compared to what we were projecting at the end of our April meeting, compared to now, based on data through 4/30, big change in our total income for the entire current year. We have a $419,943 drop in what we think will be our total income for this year ending June 30th. That goes from 12.3 million down to almost 11.9 million. Now, the good news, total expenses had a very respectable drop of $290,000 from 12.1 down to 11.8. The problem is that the reduced projections on expenses could not offset what we're losing here with total income. And that means that whereas at our last board meeting we were looking at about $195,000 cash net income, that will be down to $65,000. And of course that will influence or that will determine what our beginning cash is for next year. So that puts us down to $513,100. Now let's see here. Why? What happened since the last board meeting? Let's see. The big one, of course, was total grants and donations, which I combined in my report, is off. We've had to reduce that $338,937,000. And as I think I've already alluded to, a lot of that was ESSER reimbursements, of course, and a lot of it was Title I, which again we sort of hinted at, and I think we understand that it's going to be similar to some of our ESSER downgrades. In other words, we're expecting to get reimbursed, but it may be into the next year, not towards the tail end of this year. But our original budget, the amended budget in November, called for $412,000 some dollars in Title I, and now we're looking at about $294,000. Now, actually, the federal special ed money, which is part of the title category, is actually $165,000 over budget now we're projecting. So it's just the Title I that seems to be dragging the year end down for this year. And we're hoping then, since we do have that increase 16%, apparently we will be recouping some of that. We've talked about the E-rate, that's sort of up in the air, so that we don't know. Actually, if you look at the reductions that we're calling for the remainder of the year, every category that I had on my report, I think except maybe with outside cleaning, which was up a little bit more to about 192,000, everything was down a little bit. I would say anywhere from 2,000 to 33,000. And if you want the detail, again, it's in the report there. We will not try to go into that. Building improvement actually is going to be flat for the year, and we did reduce our debt service for this year, although as we've said, that will be going up next year as we seek to finance rather than pay cash or perhaps use grant money to cover some of that. Looking then at just the month of April, the total income, it's almost the changes that we've made for our projected year end usually is about the same script as it is for the month of April. Total income was $276,000 below budget. And if you take all of the grant categories that I have, the ESSER, the other grants, the smaller grants, everything was off about $220,000. And the state tuition actually was a little bit off budget, about $23,000, and I'm thinking 20 to 23 is about the loss that we're expecting to incur April, May, and June because of that second ADM count went from 850 to 833. Yeah. So our total projected state tuition could be a little bit overstated. But again, as was the case for the projected year-end results, almost every single category, expense category, came in below budget. So that's good. It just wasn't enough to offset what we're losing mostly in the Title I monies there. And let's see here, net income, we were projecting originally about a $95,000 loss for that month, and we did manage to inflate that to $215,000. And I do insert a column showing what our latest projection is for May, and it's showing just a slight loss of $4,000. So hopefully, if that's right on the money, that will be good. That I think sort of sums up the high points that I had for where we think our year end's going to be and what happened during the month of April. So if I've left anything out or there's other topics that I didn't cover, questions, whatever, please jump in here.
So, what you were saying is April was, is true. Basically, the bottom line is, there was expenses that we expended. We have to wait for the reimbursements to come in. We really true up the May and June to come in what they actually are. So that's why those are lower. Because if you look at the very bottom line, basically we're about $23,000. Well, not about. We are $23,000 ahead of what our budget was for last year. So we're really pretty close to what our budget was.
Right.
It's just all in how it falls through. And we spend our grants to the monies that we have. So we are not overspending anything. We're staying right to our budget. So to be honest, this really is ending quite well with where we are. And then, again, like Jill said, we're making some amendments on the Title I. And so we haven't spent those things, but we're going to make those adjustments and then we will.
Right.
So, overall, honestly, this cash flow really flows exactly to the line with where we are with our budget. When you're sitting there talking about an $11 million budget and your $23,000 variance, I consider that pretty great.
Are you comfortable with our ending cash balances that we're projecting? Because it's going to be more than the 500.
So we will have carried forward, just like we do every year, that we'll have reimbursements that'll come in the next year. So we'll spend money, but it'll come in the following year. So we've accounted for that. So yes, it actually will end up being in July, we'll get some of that money in like we do every year.
Yeah, and if you look at some of the kind of projected expenses, like if you're looking at our hardware, we're pretty much done with our hardware purchases. So that's about $140,000. It'll really be about $135,000 that we will not be spending. So there'll be some flex there, but we're pretty aligned. We've had a very interesting year with the HVAC project expanding a little bit. That's all right. What's $400,000, $500,000? It's fine. And so, I'm comfortable with it. I know Beth would be ringing the alarm quite a bit if we weren't there. And, again, it's the reimbursement process. We were here last year. This same thing going into the summer where it's like, where'd it go? And then it all came.
Yeah, we had
July and August.
really big July and August bottom line. Yes. Because of that timing difference.
That was the fun month to look at.
I think next year is going to be a critical year just because we're coming off of having the ESSER grants and the extra money, so we're going to have to be very cautious.
Yeah.
Because this is where you can have some issues, and it's not just this school; it's across the board. But Jill, we've worked really hard on next year's budget and feel really good about it. So we're just gonna have to keep on that. I mean, yeah, it'd be ideal if we had more money, but I don't think this is terrible. So, and I do think in July that we'll, like I said, we'll get some reimbursements in, and I think it'll be fine. We'll just really keep a close eye on it next year.
Yep. Yeah, I guess I was kind of probing on that just a bit because I don't see a problem. I think we'll end up pretty much at what I would say is our historical norm pre-COVID. It's just, even seeing these cash balances, gosh, at one point over $2 million. And it is quite and a lot of our newer board members don't remember what the numbers looked like before COVID. So I guess that's why I keep probing on that, but I think we're all satisfied that we are looking to be in very good shape here and then aim to keep it that way.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we have set up basically in the budget and even with our positions where we are transitioning everything, all the expenses, and this year was a transitional year for some of that. So basically looking at, with some of our curriculum renewals and things where we had prepaid for them, making sure that we would be able to sustain it in the next few years. What discounts do they have? How can we negotiate that, get it to the right place? And so vendors right now, although I now after my conversation today, I fully understand why they think I just have ESSER money just sitting around. There's like, oh, you could buy this new thing with ESSER. I'm like, who hasn't spent their money? You're a little late to the party. So now I kind of understand that, but we are set up. We have made, we've enjoyed the luxury of having to get to have some new things or try out some new curriculums and things, and we have been really able to see what we want, what's actually working with our kids, and now we're funneling and streamlining that. So it's fine. When I took this position, our budget was like $6 or $7 million, and even now our normal budget's going to be about 10, 11. It's not so bad. We've had some changes.
Let's see, that's all I had, so
All right.
All right.
I can't make the motion
Thank you.
now. So
Good job.
Yes, Mike didn't get that finally drilled through my head. It took a couple of years.
I feel like every time we get to the end, you're kind of like flinching. Just waiting. Nope, not me.
Thank you, Dave, for all that. Does anyone have any other questions? Otherwise, I'll ask for a motion to approve the board treasury report that was presented.
I'll make the motion. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next thing I'll put a
Did the
motion
new
to
glasses
approve the
help?
2023
We're good, actually. You weren't sweating nearly as
Okay,
much.
I
2023
can't
financial,
tell.
excuse me.
So, sorry, we were talking over him.
Sorry.
He's requesting a motion for approval of our April 2023 financial statements.
I'll make a motion to approve the April financials.
I'll
Thank
second.
you. We have a motion. We have a second.
RJ.
Okay. So,
Yeah.
thank you. All right. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Dave, as always, for your reporting. Truly
Sorry to
appreciate
cut you off there. The fan that we have sitting here is doing an excellent job. Angie
Yes.
brought in several, but it does obscure me from seeing you, so that's why we had that little
Got it.
cut off there.
Thank you.
Apologize.
And as always, Bookkeeping Plus, thank you for all your hard work and stuff as well there too for that. Next thing on the agenda here under old business 2023-2024 final reading and approval. So we can go ahead and discuss that as well.
I think we're all talked out on it.
Yeah. Well, you had an excellent breakdown of everything that went into the decision on your renewal recap there, so.
Yes. If you need help falling asleep tonight, reread my insurance renewal. That'll recap. That'll get you. But But yeah, I don't know that we have any further discussion. Did Ryan disappear?
So did we lose Ryan?
Oh, a video drop, looks like.
Uh-oh.
I would say we have Beth and Andrea, but no Ryan. You're up. Well, we lost our president.
Well, we can't blame
Next
that
up.
on the fans.
There we go. He's back.
Oh, he's back.
Wait for a second.
Okay.
Welcome back, Ryan.
Yes. No, my screen went. I was trying to unfreeze it for some reason. There we go. Awesome. All right, I heard you though. Good deal. All right, well, we'll go ahead and put a motion into this. We'll approve this 2023-2024 final reading and approval.
I'll make a motion to approve the final reading of the 2023-24 budget.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion regarding the budget? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, oppose? Motion carries. Thank you again to the finance team, Dave, Bookkeeping Plus. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Jill, also for getting through the budget. I know as budget season can be challenging and going through that. And as Jill said, maybe this is a record. So many passes passing through. So we truly appreciate it. And thank you, everyone, for putting our hard work into this.
Goodbye, Bookkeeping Plus. Unless you're saying,
Are we going over the audit report? Are you guys doing that?
oh, we do. Kyla is here in person, so never
Oh, okay.
mind.
Well,
Not
I'll just
goodbye.
listen to that then.
Okay, perfect. Awesome. All righty. We'll continue on with the meeting. Next thing under is new business 2021-2022 audit final report presented by CLA.
All right. Well, at this time, I would like to introduce you to Kyla. She is from CLA and is our lead auditor. So Kyla and I have gotten to spend a lot of time talking over the last 2 years as we go through this. And so she's just going to come present our final report and how we did overall. So I say, if you want to just pop up to the table. We're not really formal. If you want to stand and talk, you can, or if you want to.
No, I'll sit and join you.
I want to get in front of that fan there as close
She's
as
like,
possible.
yeah, right
I
there.
thought y'all just turned the heat up because the audit was going to be talked about.
I mean, we do know how to make budget meetings
Well,
go
we do have
fast.
special
Sorry, I
audit
wasn't there in
chairs.
person.
A very uncomfortable slant. But
Oh, goodness. Well, thanks, Jill, for the introduction. And nice seeing those that I have met before, including those on camera over there. Jill said she has packets printed of the audit report for you. If you want some extra good reading, please read through it. It's a great way to fall asleep at night. I love writing them, but I know a lot of people don't like reading them. So what I want to go through is really the highlights, that if I'm sitting on the board side, hey, what are the top 5 things I really need to take away, or okay, what does the deliverables really mean? So that's what I want to go over with you today. So on your financial statements, if you turn to page 1, which is actually number page 1, that is your audit opinion over your financial statements. It looks a little different with this cycle compared to previous cycles due to some auditing standard changes. All that means is I had to do a whole lot more on my side and ask Jill a whole lot more. Didn't really change how things are accounted for. So when it's an auditing standard change, that's what I'm responsible for. But the opinion here is a change because historically the audit opinion, the paragraph that matters, was the very last page of this opinion. Very last paragraph. Now for 22 and going forward, it's your very first paragraph you see there where it says opinion. The opinion issued was an unmodified opinion, which is your clean opinion, the gold star of opinion. So you had financial statements that were fairly presented in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. That's the opinion you want to see. The other pages of the opinion go into responsibility of us as auditors, as well as management. Ultimately, management is responsible for the financial statements themselves in the footnotes. My responsibility as the audit team are the first 2 pages here you see on the audit opinion. So if you go to page 4 where you have your statement of financial position, I know you just went over some numbers, but I'm a numbers person, so we're going to go high level over a couple more. You can see total assets in the middle of that page at the end of 22 was just north of 5.2 million. compared to the end of 21, where it was just north of 4.8 million. You see a significant change in your cash position as well as your grants receivables. Again, that timing of when you get the cash in from the IBOE versus when the cash payments are made. You also have a significant increase in your property and equipment with the buildings and improvements, as you had the HVA system, major repair, and some other additional items that you did have the blessing of that ESSER funds to really help. Hey, let's revitalize, let's reinvest in the building that's serving our schools. So you see a bit of shift there, but overall net up about 400,000. Working your way down the statement of financial position, you have your total liabilities, which were pretty flat at about the 1.9 million. You see a change in the shift there. You have more sitting in that accounts payable, those current liabilities. That's really, again, that timing. Because if you don't have the cash in from the grants, you can't pay it out. You don't want to completely deplete that cash reserves. But you had payments on your long-term debt. So those annual payments that you're making was the 200,000 the other way. So you had that decrease. So that's why your net is pretty consistent there. Total net position here in your net assets is about 3.3 million compared to 2.9 million, up about 400,000. And we'll get into some of the details of the revenue and expenses on the next page. Something critical here is that is super important to know is that this is net assets without donor restrictions. That means the school can use those reserves in the best way they see fit. There's some that are board designated, but for the most part, you have a very healthy, undesignated net assets. Some organizations I work with have it the opposite, where they have a bunch of net assets, they're in a great position, but it's restricted by a donor, a granting agency. They can't be as nimble in using those funds. So I point that out because that tells you, hey, the school's got a good, healthy reserve there that you can, hey, we got to fix the HVAC. Oh, we need this. Oh, we need this. You have the ability to use it to its best ability for the organization. Page 5 is your statement of activities and changes in net assets. As you've all been talking, as I've been listening for the past 5 minutes or so, you had grant revenue significantly increase of about 1.4 million. Again, that expanded COVID funding. You've got the expanded nutrition, you've got the ESSER funds, a lot of that funding that came through. For a total revenue of just shy of 11.2 million for 22 compared to 10.6 million for 21. Expenses, as you would expect, 21 was kind of that hybrid, somewhat in person, not in person, until 22 you had the full year. You also had some professional services. Depends on the makeup of your students. What are their needs? How are you serving those students? So you saw an increase of your total expenses to just north of 10.7 million compared to 9.2 million. Really driven by, hey, salaries, benefits, how are we serving our students, those type of things. Something I like to point out too here is you can see it's broken out between program expenses and your management in general. You've been consistent at about an 84% of your total expenses are going to your program, with about 16 at that management in general. What we say as an industry benchmark is about an 80-20 split. So you guys are north of that. You're doing a great job really making sure, hey, our dollars coming in are going to serve our programs. They're not just going to the administration of the school. Post-COVID, that 80-20 split is actually more of a 65-35, so you're still well above kind of that, hey, post-COVID split we're seeing from a lot of folks. As we continue down to this end of a pandemic back to normal, we could see it go back to an 80-20. It just really depends on how the organizations as a nonprofit as a whole really see that industry benchmark going forward.
So our overhead is not bloated.
Correct.
Which is good.
Correct. And it being a 501c3, your 990 shows that to any potential granting agencies, any potential donors. So that ratio, if I'm sitting on a board, I really want to know that because that's what the public can see. So that's why I always like to point it out to know where you're at from what a public eyes can see. Any questions on that? Awesome. So I want to dig into just one of the footnotes, and it's on page 13. It's footnote 5. You can see it's really tiny compared to some of the other footnotes, and it's on your school leases. So in 2022, leases were capitalized as capital leases or operating leases. We're going to have a whole lot of fun with a new accounting standard that is in effect for your June 30th, 2023 audit, where lease accounting is getting thrown on its head, spun around, and is going to change how it's in your financial statements. The idea of going from an operating and a capital lease to just having it as a right of use asset and a right of use liability, grossing up your assets and your liabilities on the face of your financials, amortizing that over the life of the lease and some other calculations to get what that change is going to run through your statement of activity. Bottom line, it sounds easy, but the calculation to get to that right of use asset and that right of use liability has some management assumptions around it. Life of the lease, life of the equipment. Hey, what's the building space? What's the discount rate from a present value calculation? All of that has to be analyzed. So that's why I say Jill and I get to have a lot of fun. And Beth, I hope you're hearing this too, because we can do some fun stuff.
She's like, yeah, this is gonna be great.
Yeah, I know, I'm ready for it.
Well, the good news, I've had quite a few of my calendar year ends already go through it, so I'm getting much better at it. Let's say that.
Will we have many operating leases when you're done?
It depends, because what a traditional operating lease, when you think of it, a copier or a printer, things like that, yeah, you'd have those. What we're finding is there are sometimes what's under the standard called an embedded lease. So for example, what we're seeing in a lot, I also work with higher education institutions. So they have a concession arrangement where a vendor comes in, runs their concession stand. That's a service. But embedded in that is your popcorn machine, your cash register, all these machines that are embedded leases that are impacted by this. So one of the things we'll have to work with Jill and team is what's the population of those leases? Yeah, you know, you have your capital leases where you've got the debt on the books already. What's our copiers look like? Printers, postage machines, anything athletic wise. All of that has to be analyzed to see what's going to be required under the standard. So this 3-line footnote is going to be about a page going forward. So that's why I wanted to point that one out.
Now, any guesses, how do you think that will, on the income statement, let's see, that was one, that may be confusing to some, or maybe probably just me, but on the income statement, what you call change in net assets, you could also call net income.
Correct.
On an accrual basis. We, of course, as you have heard, most of our discussion since we start out the year with our new cash budget, we stay on a cash basis. It's easier to understand. It's all on one page. Does that trouble you at all? Some people might say, well, you guys don't even talk about accrual numbers or anything or results.
No, because what matters to you as the board is really the operations of the school.
Right, we want to track our CapEx, and we don't care how we depreciate it over a estimated life.
You need to understand the difference between your monthly financials and how you're running the organization with those reports and how they roll into this. But even your regulators, Beth and team that does the Form 9, that's on cash basis. You have your AFR, your annual financial report, cash basis again. So really those that have that kind of higher level oversight want that cash basis, and that's what you're using.
Yep.
For I work with numbers, not words. For GAAP purposes, to be in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles, those accruals are made just at year end, or if you have a quarterly report for a granting agency, or anything that would require that. And Beth and team works with Jill to get those accruals done.
And I think Ball State is one that says we must have accrual.
Yes.
I think the State Board of Accounts, I think what their preference actually is cash basis.
For all of their Form 9 and other reports.
Yep. Okay.
Correct. And just as a nonprofit as a whole, forget if you didn't have IDOE in the state board or you didn't have Ball State. To be in accordance with GAAP, it is accrual basis. So if you were a standalone nonprofit, that didn't have those other regulators, you would be on an accrual basis as well. But
We do
for
financial statements on a monthly basis. They are on accrual. It's just we do the cash flow, like she said, just for management purposes. So you do get both each month.
Right, yes.
Yep, and that's typical. I know Beth works with quite a few schools as well. Same thing we see really as you're running the organization. You need to know cash is king, like what's coming in, what's going out.
Right.
Type of thing.
Yep, okay.
I like getting smiles from the accountants on the screen, I'm not gonna lie. So the next part I want to go through is on the financial statements is Jill's favorite part. It's called the single audit, the federal compliance audit.
Not that I've talked about it at all.
But with a federal compliance audit, when an organization receives and spends $750,000 of federal dollars, they're required to have a federal single audit that goes over internal control over financial reporting, as well as compliance for major programs. So starting on page 17, you have your first opinion here on the internal control over financial reporting, what we call our GAS opinion, our government auditing standards. Again, this is a clean, unmodified opinion. We didn't have any issues from an internal control standpoint. So again, that gold star of opinions on the financial statements and internal control. Then on page 19, this is the compliance piece. So how the dollars were spent. Were they spent in accordance with the federal regulations, the grant provisions, all of that fun stuff. Again, the opinion got changed. So that first paragraph right there is your opinion. Unmodified, clean opinion. We didn't have any compliance findings for the single audit this year as well. Which in comparison to 21, there were a couple items which, with the amount of dollars that were coming in fast and furious to spend under the ESSER program, and let's be frank, the lack of guidance and ever-changing guidance from the federal government, a couple findings was not unexpected, but the fact that they were corrected in that second year shows those oversight agencies, hey, this organization understood the issues, understood the importance to correct them, and did their job.
Yeah, because that's part of the package is their management responses.
Correct.
Yeah, and corrections.
Correct, correct. So I just wanted to point that out. Clean audit opinions, no financial statement findings, no compliance findings. CFA jumped, so on page 22, this is the actual schedule of expenditures of federal awards that has all the requirements by the federal government included. But that total was $3.4 million for your 22 year end versus in 21, that was only $2.2 million. So not only did you have the blessing of those extra dollars, you used them to their best effect for the organization and was in compliance. So kudos. If it wasn't so hot, I'd pat Jill on the back, but definitely kudos to management and the board for really taking the action needed for those federal requirements. Any question on that deliverable?
Now, let's see, I'm thinking, was it the single audit that you added our food service to, or was that, okay, it was part of the single audit?
Yes, so the federal nutrition program is under the scope of the federal single audit, correct?
Now, let's see, have we always in our audits we have not always had our food service audited, have we?
So with the single audit, basically if you hit over $750,000 in federal dollars, then you automatically qualify for a single audit and they have to go through programming.
And that includes the food service, yeah, the
It does.
reimbursements, yeah.
But for us, we had never really hit that because food service didn't, that before we were CEP, our figures, not everybody bought a school lunch. We also at some point didn't offer school lunch in all the building.
Right.
Had all that. And so basically what happened within the last 3 years, we went CEP, so that jumped our National School Lunch Program funding, in addition to our title programming, and then our federal special ed, our Part B. And so that put us kind of close to that threshold, and then COVID just went boom right on into it. And so we have been audited single audits. And then we also keep going through state audits for our federal programming as well. I have a meeting tomorrow with the Department of Ed because we hit desktop fiscal monitoring, and they are now auditing 6 of our programs. I'm like, can I just send them yours, because it's the same time period, same programs as well. So we're gonna have to go through that, but I'm gonna say, since we've already passed CLA's audit as well as the State Board of Accounts audit, it's just plug and play, here's our stuff again. But they did that to us, I think 3 years ago during the COVID year, while we were also doing our charter renewal, because why not? And so we had a lot of audits through that time period, and we had no problem passing them. So that's just gonna be a rinse and repeat for my summer.
Let's see, now, I may have asked this question on our exit Zoom meeting, or maybe not. Since we're talking about food service single audit, one of our neighboring school districts, someone working within the food service took off with, I think it may have been almost $1 million. It was quite a bit, several $100,000. And of course, in our board training sessions, we have consultants come in and they say, well, now, you know, the board is liable. And how do you know that somebody is not ripping off somewhere in the organization? Well, our comeback then is we say, well, we are heavily audited, and then we can go through the different categories of like you're doing here. And certainly your findings are, you have a lot of caveats. In other words, you're not guaranteeing that you haven't missed something either, because it can happen. But we as a board, I would think that we should feel very comfortable in standing on all of the audits that we have. It would be very difficult, I think, for anything fraudulent or illegal to be happening in our organization. Or should we not maybe take that for granted? That's kind of a tough question, I think.
It's a loaded question in a very hot room, so I get the hot seat now.
Sorry about that.
No. So exactly like you said, an audit is not 100% guarantee. Our opinion says that in all material aspects, the financial statements are fairly presented. Even the opinion on internal control says, hey, we had this specific parameters that we looked at, here's our results, but there could still be errors that occurred because of this limited scope.
Because
there.
a lot of it you do sampling, you don't go through every single transaction.
Correct.
Yeah.
We do not do test of effectiveness of internal controls. That's not one of the ways that we, as a risk-based audit approach, determine to be the most effective. Jill would hate me if I did that. I mean, there are times she's ready to throw me out the window. It's fine.
We would take your fan away.
I always say clients love to see me leave. It's fine. But what is good for the board to understand is exactly that. Hey, what's the scope of the audit? What is the limitations of an audit? Understanding these deliverables in the different pieces. What's internal control requirements? What's the results of that? What's compliance? What's the results of that? You have and here as well an internal control and management letter where we say, hey, given all of these things, we didn't have any material weaknesses in internal control. So you do get comfort saying, hey, on this specific scope, we had no issues. Are you ever going to have 100% or Jill's not colluding with someone? Gotta trust Jill and the other people. But having these things and understanding how they work and being able to say, okay, well, we had this is the results. We had this is the results. That gives you the response to those desk reviews, to those people asking, hey, well, how could this happen?
Right.
All of those
Plus, we have Bookkeeping Plus working with us, so I think that gives us an extra measure. And then I think, as you've pointed out in discussions with people evaluating us, some people, I think most board meetings probably don't talk about as much accounting and numbers as we do. But we've had some that think that's good because that again, just by virtue of going through all of this, we've caught a lot of glitches in our budget, and so I think that's a point in our favor too, so.
I will say, coming in as an outside third party I get the pleasure of a lot of different boards having conversations like this. The boards that are engaged are that much more fun. Beth can probably commit to that, agree to that. So having someone in a board that is as astute and into the things and understands the responsibility and really takes it to heart is a very good thing to have, for sure. I have some boards that I get to present to that they're like crickets.
Who's doing that?
I can't give names, there's some confidentiality.
Well, we are voting on to approve the treasurer's report as well as the numbers. We've had some pretty close election or votes on that, I will say, but I don't know.
Well, and I think something, Dave, that kind of lends itself to the audit process. They're not auditing the same thing every year. They're looking at different programming, or they're looking at different aspects of the program. So some of the things that they ask us are kind of off the wall. No offense.
No, none taken.
And so it's not really something where you can, think, oh, we know they're going to be looking right at here. So if we were doing something fraudulent, on the management side, we can't anticipate what she's going to ask for. Or when they get here, I mean, they are literally going through ticket stubs and receipts and deposits, or hey, I need to see your file on this, and it's live. And so kind of that whole nature of kind of that random sampling and spot checking, there's a system in there for us where it makes me feel a little more comfortable. We're like, okay, cool, we're hitting these things. One of our biggest things, which is where that district that you are discussing, is when you guys go through every board meeting, you go through your voucher register, right? Angie is kind of the watchdog on that, where she's like, what this American Airlines, what was this? And so by doing that spot checking, if one of us can't answer who that voucher went to or what that company was, that would be a huge red flag, because that's kind of what happened. They were fake invoices or fake companies on that. So I think a lot of our internal controls work very well. They definitely keep us on our toes, right? But also as thorough as we are with our finances, especially in a public setting, right? There's not questions. I'm sure there always are, right? But not for the public. I think it shows that we are being fiscally responsible
Well, I
and
think
transparent.
we're very transparent, and people can watch us live or after the fact. So it's taxpayers' money, and we're just trying to handle it as best we can and take care of the kids. So, but well, I appreciate what I'm hearing, because you've had some good information so far, and also perhaps have addressed some of our concerns, because we're not professional board people or anything, but we don't want to be one of those boards that they say, well, where in the heck was the board? How could they have let this happen? And so we try. But again, if somebody is determined to do something wrong, sometimes it's pretty hard to catch. It'll be caught eventually. So anyhow.
No, great questions. Happy to answer them the best I can. Hopefully I stop sweating then. No more questions. No, I'm kidding.
I should have warned you, but I had no clue. One of our chillers is a little.
No, you're good.
Yeah.
So I want to go through the other report is the supplemental audit report. It's the other with the kind of gray triangles on it on yours. This is the compliance report in accordance with the State Board of Accounts compliance. If Jill thought single audit was bad, I think this one might be worse. Yeah. So on page 3 here, we had 2 items that we saw as a result of audit procedures in accordance with the State Board of Accounts that, hey, there were some inconsistencies. So the first one is your average daily membership testing, your ADM. Around of the sample of 75 students, there were 11 student files that, hey, while most of the enrollment records were there, these files did not have everything in accordance with the school's policy. We did not have any attendance findings, which that is a much more severe penalty because that means the school would have been funded for a pupil that was ineligible. So we didn't have any of that. Now, is this a, hey, let's get the files in order, make sure you're following your internal policies? Absolutely. But 11 out of 75, I will tell you, had much worse. And you can see over the years with the ADM testing from a state side, they've really cracked down on it in the past 3 years, and things have gotten better. I know we've had comments and discussions like, hey, first year is like, this is new for everyone, we're still getting guidance from state, Board of Accounts, IDOE. Now it's okay, we got an understanding, things are getting better. So working your way down to saying, hey, our files are in good order. Yes, we've got room for improvement, but we're making those improvements. The second one here was a very unique situation that I'm pretty sure Jill's like, how did you come across this?
Yeah, I remember
Again,
that,
with
yeah.
the random
In the,
sampling.
Yeah.
exit interview.
Yeah, so one of the requirements is that if an employee is on paid leave, that the school coordinates with the attorney to make sure, hey, everything's kosher before they go on leave and have that payment. There was a situation where an employee was placed on paid leave, but that attorney discussion did not take place. So that's what that comment is for. Again, one of those requirements that don't run into it every day. It's one of those unique things. But now that it's brought to everyone's attention, Jill, management understand, okay, yes, this is a requirement. Going forward, that will be completed. So, any questions on those?
So I'll make a quick comment on the ADM. This is something that Angie spends a lot of time trying to track down documents. I would just say I would never anticipate us being 100% on that without findings, especially given some of our family situations.
Yeah.
Getting a birth certificate can be complex. For me, my own son, when he joined my family, it took 18 months just to get his birth certificate, and he was 16 years old. So that is something, Angie is documenting, all the attempts that we've made to get those things squared away. And when they say, well, we can't get it, we've got community partners that can kind of help with that. But she's worked her tail off for the last 2 years, really trying to hunt that down. So, and then with the attorney part, I sent this to Mike Lacey. This is very rare that we ever have something like this. So this was one of those, I think it was the first time in my 8 years that we'd had this situation. So thanks for finding that, Kyla.
Yep.
It's all right. So, we've worked that out and know what we would do moving forward.
So the last one I want to talk through here is the governance communication letter. It's the larger of the two letters. The other one I referenced already with the no material weaknesses when we were talking about internal controls with the single audit. If I'm sitting on a board, this letter is a summary of everything from the results of an audit, and if something was going to go wrong, it was going to be included in this letter. So it's very important that you understand the pieces of this letter as you're sitting on the board. Now, if this is the first time you're seeing something went wrong in this letter, that's a different issue. We should have many conversations before it's finalized in this letter. But this gives the board a full summary of, hey, since we started the audit, since we've had the communications, here's the results. Here's where we spent the time, our accounting estimates. We make sure management doesn't have any bias in those. Didn't have any issues with management's estimates. You can see here, no new accounting policies were adopted during 2022. That's gonna have a whole paragraph in the leases for 23. So you'll see, hey, there's some accounting changes that we'll work through. On page 2 of that letter, there's a section for uncorrected misstatements and corrected misstatements. The uncorrected misstatements would be if something of, hey, we're going through the audit process, there's a difference on a reconciliation that isn't of a significant amount that we would require adjustments, but we would bring it to management's attention, and they can decide, hey, do we want to book the audit adjustment or do we want to just pass on it? It's not going to be material to the financial statements. This paragraph here says we didn't have any of those. We didn't have any uncorrected misstatements. The second part here with the corrected misstatements, it's really important to see that it says detected by management as a result of audit procedures. So this says, while yes, there were some adjustments which are attached to this letter, they weren't stuff that my team as an audit team found. It was stuff that, hey, timing of when Bookkeeping Plus got us the trial balance, or hey, we were waiting on this grant report to finalize, those type of things. Those are the ones that management let us know, hey, these are coming, we'll give them to you when they come, but we include them in your letter so you can understand, okay, what you saw at June 30 versus what this is showing, here's those differences. So if that was gonna be something that, if I'm sitting in the board shoes and it says, hey, audit adjustments that were detected by audit procedures, that would give me pause. Hey, what are we missing in our internal control for financial reporting? What's not in a part of our monthly checklist or something like that? To make sure I have comfort that the financials I'm getting and making decisions on are appropriate.
I remember now during the exit interview, you brought that up. And you said, if I recall, because we went down to see what the adjustments were.
Yes.
And you said, actually, there was only one adjustment, and it was a real small one.
It was like $100.
Yeah.
I was like, man.
It was nothing, yeah. And that was the only actual mistake that you had to correct for us. And the others were, again, timing. We were,
Yep.
you know, something was coming in late. Everything's been coming in late, reimbursements.
Yes.
Everything, you know, so.
Yes,
So
yes.
that was good.
Yep. And then the last paragraph here on the letter on page 3 is regarding the supplementary information. With that, you have your statement of schedule of expenditure of federal awards, that federal schedule we went over for the single audit. This just tells you that, hey, this was prepared as part of the audit process. We compared it to the financials, had no significant differences between the two, and have issued a report on it as well. Alright, well, that is my spiel. Hopefully it wasn't too long, other than...
Oh, yeah, here's the page you went through with.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So, only one minor little tiny correction.
Yes. So if there's any questions I can answer that won't put me in a hot seat, I'm happy to do so. You're done with your questions for tonight.
Oh,
I'm kidding.
I'm straining to come up with any here, so I can't read my notes I took at our audit exit interview here, so.
Say, it's been a little bit.
Yeah.
Oh, that's what I wanted to mention too. So part of the delays, because COVID has been less than helpful from a regulatory standpoint. COVID had extended deadlines for 2020. They had extended deadlines for 2021. 2022, they said no more. Well, that only works when you're done with the previous. So when we were here in the fall to do 22's audit, Jill and I were finishing 21 single audit at the same time. So poor Jill was like back between different years. She got a little taste of my world working 3 years, but 21 single audit was due September 30th of 22. It was filed on time with the federal requirements. 2022 single audit was due March 31st of 23. It was too filed in accordance with the requirements. So with all of that, what I've called is we've drained the swamp, no more extensions, we're back on a regular schedule. But hopefully when you see me next time, it's December,
Yeah.
not May.
That was one thing, you said something about changing to 120, giving us 120 days with the bank, because the bank usually used to, when we first signed up with Main Source, they were wanting all of this in like September, October or something, which, you know, they've never gotten.
Yeah, we actually had to ask them for a waiver on it, and they didn't actually know what I was talking about.
Oh, okay.
When I
Another
asked,
question I've asked Jill, and she's like, what are you asking me?
what is this? So the covenant, because we always focus on that debt service ratio, right? That's the part that we were really focused on. It did say in the original loans that within 30 days of year end, we would have CPA audited financial statements ready for the bank, which can't happen at all. And so right now, I think it's 120 days. And probably, I think as we are going into this next agenda item, when we work this out with our new banker with Brad, looking at 180 days. So give us that 6-month window because, you know, we're never done with our audits until that time period because it's a lot of back and forth. especially now single audits are tossed into the mix as well. And there's just a lot to go through.
And Jill and I have talked to that really gets everything in line for you, because state board requires, you know, hey, you guys are finishing up end of December anyway. So then it's just not monitoring so many different requirements.
Because there's a lot of deadlines to sort through. Big happy school. Thank you, Kyla.
Yeah.
I think this has been worthwhile. It's been better if it wasn't so hot. But
I would have much rather it in December, let's be honest. That's what I would like. We're striving for.
It would have been really hot in here in December too. Next December it won't be though.
Yes.
It'll be regulated.
There we go.
In theory. I know, now it's mad at us, it's not gonna happen again. It's all right.
Well, if you guys need anything, Jill has my contact information. She can professionally stalk me. She can help you guys do the same. I appreciate the conversation and the time tonight. And if you have any other questions,
yeah, you seem surprised. That exit interview, you said, wow, you guys are actually going to ask questions and talk. So I gather that maybe not, some boards are, most boards are not quite.
some are more involved than others. Yes, some are a significant amount of volunteers that have a lot of time draws, and others have a little bit more flexibility with their time, or it hits them at the right time for their schedule. So it's all over the gamut. I enjoy every single one of them, but some are, you know, conversations are better than just listening to my talking head as well.
All right. Well, thank you.
Fabulous.
Go enjoy.
Thank you for that. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. I'm gonna go enjoy some fresh air.
Yeah.
Have a good night, everyone.
Thank you.
And we'll chat soon, because
Very soon, yes. And I guess I should also mention, so Wall State had put the rebid out for the contract, and we were awarded the contract again, so we will be engaging for going forward. So Jill, you're stuck with me again.
fabulous.
Have a good one, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, bye, Kyla.
Thank you. All right, next thing and the last thing on the agenda is the finance proposal approval.
Here.
Yes, so that should have been in your packets. Basically, this is just for the financing that we have discussed as far as our bleacher project goes and as far as our computer purchases for next year. I do not have a definite number on what the computer purchase will be because obviously we're at the mercy of the market. The bank is aware that they do have our financials now, and so they are working on processing everything. So basically, this is just formal approval and authorizing Dave and I as signers so that we can move forward with this financing, and we'll report back once everything is negotiated.
Now, is this the one that the chairman of the board has to personally guarantee everything also?
Yes, absolutely. This is all tied to Ryan Lynch and
Okay.
his profession. So our hands are all free of it.
Noted. Okay.
Try to avoid getting any of those guarantees that you have to sign.
Yes.
So, but that's pretty much the proposal in front of you.
Can I ask a question? I know that we bought a bunch of computers during this last school year, and what are these computers for then?
We buy computers every year. We do basically a 300 device refresh every year. And so we cycle them through. Typically a computer will last a student, depending on their
How gentle they
ability.
are.
Yes. So we typically start off the kindergartners on ones that are, they're okay to get banged up.
Uh-huh.
And then first grade, they issue, they're reissued a new one in 5th grade, reissued going into 9th grade. And so they're typically on a 3 to 4 year cycle, depending on the availability. The Chromebooks that we had to get in the fall 2020 were not very durable. did not last very long, and so that's why we had to do an extra purchase, plus we had an increase in enrollment. So that's basically what this is. Our staff computers, we do a 30 device refresh every year as well. And so that's kind of where it goes, and depending on the market and the year, it's somewhere between 90,000 and 150,000.
Do we know at this point, like, how many we need, or we're still, like, IT still going through them all and trying to figure that out, or?
No, we know. We've already purchased the computers that we need for the 23-24 school year. We purchased in February, we have them. But we'll need another 300 for the 24-25 school year. So that's what this is.
Oh, so just for 300 more?
Yes.
And we may not spend the whole one.
What do y'all do?
I'm sorry, Ryan?
What do y'all do with the old, or the current ones right now?
So once they reached the status of obsolete and they pass all of those checks, we go through a recycling company that meets all guidelines for basically the destruction and the certification of all of the information that could possibly be on there. They're wiped several times before they leave our facility, but then they go through and do all the federal requirements on that. And they give us back an amount. It's usually not somewhere between like 3,000 or 5,000, depending on how many we recycle out. And we use that for computer repair. So we do that, and then some of the computers we actually keep, depending on how well they hold up. They end up being like a testing lab, or they end up being training tools for our IT interns, and so they get to really break them apart and kind of redo that. A lot of what we do, basically, Air Force, you guys have junk birds where you pull your parts from. We've got a lot of computers that fall in that category, and so our IT department is very meticulous at hoarding computers and parts and reusing, so that we aren't paying astronomical computer repair costs, because our computer, the kids have some challenges sometimes with them. A few gremlins around that magically destroy the computers. We've never caught them, but
I think they're all in the freshman class.
yeah, I think they must live in the freshman lockers. It seems to be that class every year. That
Wasn't it the middle school that was the last to phase out of the textbooks into everything on the computers?
So when we went one-to-one, we've always had a classroom set, which is kind of how our method worked. But most of our middle school and high school, we started moving away from that textbook and moving into digital curriculum about 2010. So it was fairly early on. And then when we added the elementary, they had a classroom set. Now we're at a point where we are fully one-to-one for everything. So we do still have some of the old textbooks kind of around, but most of our teachers' resources are digitized in one way, shape, or form. There's a lot there.
All right. We need a motion to approve this.
I'll make a motion that we approve the financing proposals presented.
Okay.
I will
We have a motion.
second that.
And you said we have a second. I'm sorry.
Yes,
Yes.
Angie seconded.
Oh, it's a second. Okay, thank you. Sorry, I didn't hear that. All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Financing proposal has been approved. Thank you for that. All right. Do we have any other further discussion this evening?
Okay, the only thing I have is a reminder that June 3rd on Saturday, 1 p.m., we get to see our next class walk across the stage. So there are 51, I believe, that will be
51.
making that journey. 14 of those are early graduates. So
Nice. I
14.
assume everybody saw the supplement in the Herald Bulletin where they had the pictures of all the grad. That was good. That was good. So,
It's nice to be included in that. They did have a reporter change over, so he emailed us and he said, hey, I heard you guys will know how to do this. So kind of showed him the ropes on that. But yeah, we're very much looking forward to this graduation this weekend.
Now, will everybody, when we come in as board members, will everybody know where to direct us to? I'm assuming we're all,
In theory, you guys, if you are facing the stage, you're gonna be in that bottom right section.
where we were last year.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
And there will be markers on your
Okay.
seats. This is a phenomenal year because you guys don't have to sit with 3 seats between you or anything. We get to do normal stuff again.
Yeah.
So, for anybody that is not able to attend but you want to check it out, it will be live streamed. And they have guaranteed that our sound will be better this year than it was last year.
And we won't read, I know a couple, it's been a while ago, but they were reading off all the board members and half weren't there. We're past that, aren't we?
So that's why I've asked for RSVPs, and if you can be there by 12:45, I will eyeball, make sure you're in the right spot before they actually acknowledge you.
Can you put me down as RSVP?
Yes, ma'am.
I plan to be there.
Right.
I will be there. Yes.
All right.
Same, I'll be there.
Never beg.
Does
Make your
Ryan
declarations right now.
have to be on the stage then? Are we doing that?
Right, yeah.
Some talk about that, but.
I mean, we should. Ryan, we're gonna make you do another speech.
Well, we gotta talk about that one.
Yes. No. So we'll get through all of it. It's great. Still haven't written my speech, but I've got 4 days. Right? We're good. For the Jets, we wing it.
Awesome.
Uniform
Any other
was
further
not.
discussion?
Hey, so that's what we do in the summer.
I don't think so.
Nope, we're good.
All right. Well, thank you for everyone for attending this evening. Our next meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, June 27th at on Tuesday evening at 6 p.m. Can I get a motion to approve a motion to adjourn our meeting?
I'll make a motion to adjourn it.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for
The
attending.
June meeting may be even hotter than this.
Safe travels, everyone.
You too, Ryan.
Gonna get a text. Bye.